Is your corporate culture ready to embrace big data? We're going to find out. I'm Tanya Hall with Tech Republic, and we're here with Tania Yuki. She is the founder and CEO of Shareably and a member of the World Economic Forum. Welcome, Tania.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Okay, so Shareably is your company. In fact, on your site, you say, we collect and transform the world's social data into actionable business intelligence. What does that mean exactly?
What does that mean exactly? It's a big claim. Really what it means is we take kind of the hot mess of all the information out there about brand performance, consumer preferences, and shifts in perspectives on the part of purchasers and distill it into a dashboard where a brand can log in and see how are they performing on platforms like Instagram. How have the consumers that they're trying to reach potentially changed, and what do they really care about so they can message more effectively? And then in the long term, really get a sense of what has been the impact of all of this activity when it comes to their actual sales or any other sort of KPIs that they've got for their business. And we try to make it as simple and as clean as possible. It certainly is a lot of data to work through, but that's definitely the mission statement.
And data mining is actually helping businesses continue to grow and transform their business. What have you seen since launching Shareably from the standpoint of businesses making that big digital transformation to today?
I think the biggest shift that we've seen, probably first and foremost, is a big ideological shift. I think when we first went to market back in 2013, people were really hell-bent on their Facebook strategy or their Twitter or what they were doing on television, and it was all sort of neatly bucketed into these disparate lines of business. I think the big ideological shift that we see is people really acknowledging that your customer is just one person who you're going to reach or make meaning to at multiple touch points, and that they need to be aligning their businesses to make sure that the customer feels like it's seamless, whether they're buying at an online store or walking into a real live store or actually receiving a post on Instagram, for example. So many companies, I think, are trying to make that shift, but it really is a big shift because it involves fundamentally restructuring how teams are organized and how incentives get aligned across groups, because that's really the thing that's going to lead the ultimate behavior. We've seen in our data much more demand for cross-platform metrics and for a real unified view of what's going on at many different touch points. And I think it's because people are just really overloaded and they can't have 17 different reports. They just kind of want one that tells them whether to take an umbrella or not because it's raining. You know, they don't necessarily want all of the underlying data anymore.
So, measuring data is kind of overwhelming, and there's a lot of brands out there where you've got leadership inside the organization that may not be incredibly tech savvy. What would your advice be to maybe a chief marketing officer or a marketing person at a company who's trying to get their business to move forward and get into this current platform, this current age that we're in?
So the biggest advice that I'd give in that instance, particularly if it's not something you've done before, is you actually do need to get your hands dirty. And by that, I mean, it sounds really neat and clean to give all of that data work over to your agency or to a really smart consultancy. And you can do that as well. But the companies that we see really succeeding are those that are building those capabilities in-house and making them homegrown. Because nobody's going to understand what's important in your data more than someone who actually walks the halls of your business. So I think just being willing to be a beginner again and to learn stuff new, and that's not always the easiest thing, particularly when you've gotten really good at something else throughout the course of your career. But actually embracing data as a core part of how you make decisions and making sure that everyone's really able to get in there and start to get real answers for themselves. It's very frequently a top-down sort of cultural shift.
What brand out there, has actually done a really good job of implementing that cultural shift inside the organization?
Gosh, I think there've been a lot of examples, and I think many companies are still in the early stages. I know that very recently I was listening to a talk by I forget the title, but an executive at Target that was talking about how they were instituting change from both the store level to how things were merchandised and bought, and how the way that they had made that work was, right from the CEO's office. They had empowered a team to actually go about and make those changes in partnership with all of the existing teams. And change management is really tough. And I think it can be very easy to try and have people who are doing things the old way become the leaders for change. And I think that doesn't take into account a really fundamental thing about human nature, which is if it was my idea, I probably don't want to broom it, even if it's not working. So I think, empowering people with fresh ideas to come in and actually start making some of those shifts was really the story that we heard at Target. I think you're starting to see that play out in their digital presences and in how they're integrating a lot of their television as well as their digital and social. But I think a lot of people are pitching in. Coles is also doing some great work. But I think it's still yet to be called as to who's managed to affect this institutional change and have it really resonate at the cash register.
You're data mining, you're collecting all this data for businesses about their own consumers, about their competition. As a consumer myself and a user of the internet, what do we need to understand about privacy? Is that something we should be concerned about? There was an article, out this week about, tracking people over Thanksgiving. Are you, tracking at that, micro level as well?
It's such an important question. I believe that, I don't think there's anything to be afraid of, meaning, yes, there will be some bad actors, and yes, there will be some stuff that will go wrong, and yes, there will be some speed bumps. I think it is a really exciting time for consumers to actually start educating themselves on the value of the data that they are allowing to be captured and measured about themselves as they go about their digital lives. And, I firmly believe that in the future, consumers will actually be able to participate in that value exchange in a much more meaningful way, because your data just becomes something that you own or that you sort of have the use of, in the same way that many other things that you have are things that can actually benefit your life. And I think it's already happening to a degree. Like, if you're watching Netflix, you'll get personalized recommendations. Like that's a value exchange, where in exchange for looking at your viewing history, I now get the benefit of you telling me and saving me time and giving me great content experiences. But I believe that will also become monetary, and that consumers will have a much more active role in what does and doesn't get collected. But I think, it's really on the average consumer to want to be bothered to learn more about this. And, I think it's very easy to be afraid of things and much harder to actually roll up your sleeves and start to see how this can actually craft a much better world for everyone.
Absolutely. So not everybody can not every business can afford to hire Shareably. What would be some real tangible advice to a business owner who's trying to transform their business, and what kind of tools should they consider using to do their own data mining and information collecting?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's nothing complicated about how to get started. And if you're active, if you have a website and a social media presence, like if you're on Instagram or Facebook, there's a lot of really great tools that are native to those platforms too, that can start to really orient you about how you're trending. It won't give you competitive views, but oftentimes it'll give you what you need to know about directionally. Are you going left or right? So I definitely start with those tools. And then I think over and above that, I think I'd give the advice of saying, I see a lot of small businesses or some up and coming businesses trying to seem too polished and too professional online and on social too early. And you've got to remember, like, if you're a small business, you have a massive advantage over many of the large corporations, because we are in one of the lowest trust environments that have ever existed, and people want to buy from people. People want to learn from people, and people want to hear from people. So I think personalizing your business and putting your people and your team and yourself, if you're the founder or a leader, front and center, using these platforms is one of your best ways to master those sorts of experiences, and then keeping tabs of what other things your engagers care about, so that you can keep crafting better and better content experiences that ultimately lead to trust and then to more of a buying relationship.
Well, I have been following your work for a long time. Data mining is so important for businesses today. If somebody wants to follow you, maybe get some of your advice on being a female entrepreneur or a business leader, or maybe just data mining for their business, how can they go about doing that?
If anyone wants to get in touch, we have a Facebook page, so it's facebook.com/shareably. I also have my own Facebook page, which I give a lot more sort of entrepreneurial tips and just things around starting and running a business. So please definitely hit us up there. Other than that, you can get in touch anytime, and there's a load of free resources on our website, on the shareably.com site. Free presentations, webinars, videos, stuff that we've put out there. So I definitely encourage you to reach out and sign up for our newsletter so you can get all of those research briefs as they come out.
I'll do it. And thank you again. I'm Tania Hall. You can follow more of my interviews at Tech Republic and ZDNet, or find me on Twitter at Tania Hall Radio, or Facebook by searching Tania Hall Show. Thanks again.